Alright guys, so our focus in this video is quadratic inequalities. So left side is the front, right side is the back. On the backhand side it does say, number one, we're going to factor the quadratic function so that we can draw a rough sketch using zeros, but now we can't always factor, which sometimes we might have to use the quadratic formula. So front and back, go ahead and copy those down. Then I'm going to give you one example, or actually a couple of examples to look at. Okay guys, so in this first example it says find the solutions of the following. Well, I've got all this quadratic stuff and I've got an inequality and then I've got zero. So what I'm going to do is kind of follow the note cards. It says factor the quadratic function. So I'm going to try to factor this first. All right guys, so as you can see I factor this, but something to direct your attention to. The first term had a negative, so I want to make sure I take out a negative before I try to factor. And then this trinomial factors nicely into that. So we've just factored the problem. All right, the second step on the note card says to draw a rough sketch using zeros and end behavior. All right, guys, as you can see, I drew a rough little sketch in my graph, and what I did basically is I took my factors, and remember, I'm going to set my factors equal to 0, and I solve, and I get my zeros being at 3 and negative 2, and then that's all I need, because since the first term is negative, if you remember, way back in Unit 1, since the first term is negative, I know that my graph will make a frowny face. So my graph is going to look something like you see here, where I've got two x-intercepts. It's going to cross the x-axis, go up, come down. You don't need to find the vertex at all, because the note card just says draw a rough sketch using the zeros and end behavior. Okay, then the other part of the note card says, based on the inequality, where is the graph below or above the x-axis? All right, guys, as you can see, I've got the greater than 0 highlighted along with this part of the graph highlighted, because what I want to know is where is the graph, where is the actual graph greater than 0? Now, you got to think about this for a second. Another word for x-intercepts are zeros. So where is the graph greater than my zeros? In other words, zeros and x-intercepts lie on the x-axis. So what I'm really thinking is the following question. So the question that I really want to ask myself is, where is the graph greater than because of my inequality, where is it greater than the x-axis? Zeros are on the x-axis. And as you can see, I got this part of the graph that's highlighted. That is the part of the graph where it's bigger or greater than the x-axis. Now, the last part of the note card says your final answer is going to be an interval notation, which could be brackets and or parentheses. All right, something to make sure you know is that the fact that if I have a less than symbol or a greater than symbol, so I got a greater or less than, doesn't matter which one, if I have one of those in my problem, I'll always use parentheses to write my final answer. So since my original problem had a greater than symbol, and I know that it's greater than in this part of the graph, if I look at it in terms of my graph is greater than the x-axis between negative 2 and 3. Anything between negative 2 and all the way to 3 is where my graph is greater than. So my final answer would be between negative 2 and 3. This is the final answer. Now, the way you're writing this does not mean an ordered pair. That just means between negative 2 and 3 is where the graph is greater than 0. All right, that is problem number 1. All right, guys, we got problem number 2 here. It says find the solutions of, here it is again, I've got x squared minus 2x minus 5. This time I have a greater than or equal to 0 in this case. So I would try to factor this problem, but there's nothing that multiplies to give me negative 5 that gives me negative 2, so that means I have to do something else. All right, guys, as you can see here, this problem was not factorable, so the note card does say to factor the quadratic, but we can't in this case. So to find our x-intercepts, I'm going to have to use the quadratic formula to solve. Now, this is my exact answer, but if I'm plotting this, because it does say in step number 2 to draw a rough sketch, I don't know what that point is. So now it's okay to give me decimals, because now I want you to draw a picture now that you know what the x-intercepts are. See, this does you no good when you try to draw a picture. So something to keep in mind is when you draw a rough sketch using zeros, I'm going to plot these zeros right here, negative 1.4 and 3.4. And I also know that since A is positive, right, so if A is positive, I know it should make a smiley face. So to do number 2 on the note card using zeros and end behavior, my graph would look something like this, where it's opening up, and I've got my zeros plotted. You don't need to find the y-intercept. Just do a rough sketch. Now, once you're done with this, the question is, where is the graph below or above the x-axis? Well, since my inequality is, again, greater than or equal to 0, what I want to do is highlight that part where the graph is above the x-axis. Well, it's above over here and over here. The question I have for you is, based on that graph, what would our answer be? And I'll give you a hint. It's a 2-part answer. That's all I'm going to tell you. I want you to try to figure that out and bring that in class tomorrow. See you on Tuesday.